AdaPia, we are live.
Hi, Emily. It's so good to be live. We were chatting backstage, but so
Yeah.
happy to be doing this. Thanks for having me.
Oh, me too. Because I read your book already and then I was rereading it.
Mhm.
And I just have so many questions. Like I told you when I was reading your book, I'm like, I think you're writing about me, but you've been doing this a lot longer and you just put into words so eloquently a lot of the things that I've been through.
Mm.
And I can tell, that you did a lot of research for it. You've done a lot of research in your own awakening and everything, and you sharing it with people. It's just awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? First, like why are you writing this book and what's your
Yeah.
background? Because the Onward podcast is all about, you're like the perfect guest because it's all about facing adversity,
Mhm.
moving forward. And that's how I did it for the first couple of years. And then I thought to myself, well, based on my journey and other people that I've been interviewing and discovering yourself along the way.
Mhm.
And that's what
Mhm.
you've done.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, and thank you for the kind words about the book. I mean, in a way I wrote the book for myself, that I needed that book when I first started, or at least like my second awakening in 2017, the one where I really struggled with my career identity and what I was going to do and like be in the world and success and things like that. And but that was the 2017 was when I like really went through what's considered a healing crisis as well as part of the awakening. And so I wrote it for myself. I needed that book. And so I wrote it for people who are going through the process. And so I'm so glad you're saying that because, the title Productive Intuition is, what's that about? Is it about working? Is it about, I mean, it's so many things, but for those who are called to it, they understand that right now, like the world has just gifted us this like moment in time to like really wake up and figure out like who am I. And so we go through a process, like whether it's spiritual, mystical, or just intellectual, even around like questioning like what just happened. Like, I'm speaking specifically about what like the pandemic has brought forward for people. We had more time to spend with ourselves, so all these kind of factors, like this confluence of factors, come together. But yeah, the book really, it kind of is like a manual for awakening, presented in a way that I would understand it as a business person, a self-identified business person. So I wrote the book coming out of a few years of this healing crisis and identity crisis and all kinds of crises that I had to go through, but to really find myself. And so in reality, it wasn't a crisis, it was a gift.
So what happened in your life that you feel that you're saying is a crisis? Was a crisis?
Hmm. Um, like absolute confusion and chaos about everything. I mean, to put it in practical terms, I left my whole career, and I left thinking I was going to, be of service in some kind of different or better way. So I'll start by saying that I was like judging where I was coming from and thinking that, I had like better, different work to do. And I was compelled, like there's not a real rational explanation. But just things weren't working. And after a 20-year career where I've always been able to make things work, always, and I've always been able to bounce back like pretty quickly. Like if something, um, I would always be able to fall on my feet. And like this time, I really kind of fell on my knees. And so just nothing was working. I thought I was going to maybe be like a women's coach. And I was going to, start a blog and a podcast. And I did all of this because I really thought this is what I want to do. I want to do more. This is Me Too was happening. I thought, gosh, like I need to be doing more with my life. Um, than being an executive in the financial industry, and that just wasn't working. And so the crisis really stemmed from what felt like an unraveling. Like it's not rational, but anybody who's been through any kind of a crisis or burnout, or it was kind of like a constant panic attack, like I just
Mm.
couldn't figure anything out. And so it rolls from an emotional, psychological, like questioning myself, like really deeply questioning like who am I? Because I'm supposed to be good. I'm supposed to be successful. Like I'm supposed to be all these things. So all of that identity was just going away. And so I was like, who am I? I don't understand what's going on. I couldn't figure it out. So I was always up here trying to figure it out with my head. Um, and then I also just had a, essentially what turned out to be like a crisis emotionally. Like I just went through a lot of, to use more terms that we might understand in personal development or spiritual, but like heart openings. And so I was processing massive amounts of grief, that kind of hit me out of nowhere. And it was just a total like and I wasn't making money. Like I couldn't explain what was happening to me to my husband. And so just basically like everything to me, I was seeing everything fall apart, and I had no solid ground to stand on. So that's how it was like to me it was that kind of a crisis, because I've never not been in control.
Yeah. Were you burnt out at work?
Yeah, for sure.
So you
Yeah,
said
like
you're in the financial industry and it started with like a lot of burnout, just like, and then
yeah,
like, who am I? And I
yeah,
think I've been there. I think
yeah,
a lot of us have had that burnout.
yeah,
And then you just want an easy fix. Like, give me the
yeah,
list of what I have to check off so that I can get through this. So
yeah,
why do you,
exactly.
what do
Yeah.
you,
Give me the strategy, give me the tactics, give me the business plan. I'm gonna execute. I'm gonna get this done. And that just wasn't, it just wasn't working. And yeah, I mean, and there was definitely burnout there. I mean, I had been going nonstop because I was in the startup side of the financial industry, and I had been for quite a while. And that was coming off of being an entrepreneur. I had been an entrepreneur for years and years and years. And so that's nonstop,
yeah,
nonstop. And so, um, yeah, that it was, you know, in a way, it's not a real crisis, but it is a crisis because it felt like one. Do you know what I mean? Like in
yeah,
terms of like what we might define as a crisis, but whatever we go through personally, if it feels like a crisis, it certainly is. But it's funny to talk about because it really is just like I had no control, and I was being humbled over and over and over again until I finally figured out that I needed to stop. I just needed to stop and
that's
breathe
interesting. I
myself.
mean, how'd you figure that out? Because typically, well, for somebody like me who I don't say I'm a hyperachiever anymore. I say I have a hyperachiever saboteur. The
Mm,
answer is just to keep pushing. I mean, keep moving up, keep working harder, figure it out, check it
yeah,
off your list, get something done.
yeah.
And you said you had to stop?
Mhm. Yeah, I think the stopping came, well, first of all, I was able to go back to a practice that I hadn't been able to do for years, which was a daily yoga practice. So
Mhm,
that helped with the slowing,
mhm.
right? It helped with the slowing down of the mind, at least for those 90 minutes that I would be in class. And I kind of went back to some meditative practices, and that really helped to slow it. But the stop actually came from a breakdown. Like I broke down. I had a breakdown. I was really upset. I was really upset that nothing was working.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to lose my husband. I thought I was going to lose my house. I thought it was all going to go away. And so I had a breakdown, and I had an epiphany, and that epiphany led me to actually like stop and really really reflect and spend more time in like more journaling and contemplation. Like, meditation is good, but I actually had something to focus on that I guess was different, that was more of a listening instead
Mhm,
of even in meditation I push, you know.
mhm.
And so it was really, it came from they might, I think there's a saying that's like break down to break through, and unfortunately that was true for me.
Well, when you're, I mean, I can imagine working in the entrepreneurial space and the financial space. It's just so fast paced, fast moving. You're moving so fast that I can relate to that, I think, because like that's how I was when I worked and I just never felt my feelings. And I was moving so fast that if I had any intuition, I didn't listen to it because I didn't have time.
Yeah,
And I wasn't quiet enough to listen to it. And I didn't do enough like the reflection and the journaling. That's when you start to know things, but not through your thinking head.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I didn't have those practices, and because I couldn't find my footing in in my, my usual strategies, let's call them. And I live in Los Angeles, and so there's plenty of opportunities to take workshops and sound baths and breath work, and so I started down that path, and then those gave me some different tools to be more in my body as well. Because I love, my body loves yoga. I love it. And it's really wonderful for my mind. And then there's other practices like breath work and even sound baths. And I would take workshops just to try to, like, I knew my answers weren't in my mind, and so I went looking for them. And so I went looking for them more in the spiritual community or the conscious community. And I really started to piece a lot of things together. But I still felt like um, I didn't really belong, if you will, in the spiritual community. Like I understand a lot of it, and there's incredible people there, but because I thought, well, if I can't be in business, then maybe I should be over here, right? Which is, I think, the
Mhm.
normal thing that a lot of people do is, well, I can't be in this world. That's a bad world. Let me go over here in the spiritual world where everyone's like good. And there's a ton of ego in the spiritual and the conscious community to begin with. There's a ton of it. It's not so cut and dry, let me put it that
Yeah.
way. And so, but I went in with like biases and beliefs and all kinds of things that I learned from, but I still just kind of felt like I didn't really belong there. There was something about it that I couldn't figure that one out either. I was like, why? Well, if it's not this, what is it?
Mhm.
um which went with the breakthrough, which really came down to, like, what was shocking to me, the epiphany was, I actually really like being in the financial and investment industry. I really do. And I don't want to be a solopreneur. I really want to work with very, very aligned business partners. And when I stated that, albeit in on my knees, like, shaking my fist at God, but I realized it. And you know a few days later, I got a call from my current business partners that I
Oh,
knew. I mean,
wow.
I was kind of like advising them. They're people I know. I have a big network, and basically they called essentially to ask me to be a partner. True story.
Wow.
It's like one of those magical, like, you won't believe it, but I swear to God it's true. Um, and that was because I got so very clear. I got so very aligned. And my one of my practices since then is to not wait to get hit in the head by a 2x4 to be able to get clear on what it is that I really
Yeah.
want, because
Because
I'm
once you
kind
get
of
clear, things start to come to you.
totally.
And I've interviewed a guy named Sky Nelson about synchronicities.
Hmm.
And that's, I think, what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Um, I can see that some people are watching, but can you let us know you're here? Comment and let us know, and ask any questions that you have for us. So the title of this episode is "Integrate Your Intuition
Mhm.
and Intellect to Achieve Better Outcomes." So you were using a lot of your intellect,
Yep.
right, at the beginning, and not listening when you're in the financial and entrepreneurial. We're not listening to your intuition, and then you learned how that you can listen to your intuition and your intellect and get better outcomes in what you were doing already.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and when the part of it, like the whole book too, is because I realized that I did listen to my intuition also. I just didn't know that I was doing it. So I really wanted to approach the whole intuition thing from the perspective of, I want to know how this thing works so that I can use it as a tool instead of it being accidental. And so that's what led me into doing so much research, and to even doing a lot more reflection on myself. And that took me all the way back to childhood. It took me into some really amazing places. And the inquiry around intuition really opened me up to understanding how integrated it had been in my life. The key issue was that I wouldn't listen to it because I didn't know that that's what it was, because I didn't understand what it was. So that's why I wanted to write the book the way I wrote it. Was I wanted to show, like, here's how it works in so many different ways, and here's how much grander we are than just our even just like call it the prefrontal cortex part of our brain, like, or the left brain. Like, it's even just talking about the right brain,
Yeah,
that's the intuitive brain.
right.
And like, so that's without even going into like anything spiritual or metaphysical. It's biology. And so it was so fascinating to me. And then obviously, like, for me, the work is always to reflect and go back into the stories and to see them with a new perspective. And that's where I started to find all the instances where my intuition in various different ways was speaking to me, and that pretty much like exact correlation. When I listened, I would have, some of the most amazing things, that best experiences, best things that would happen when I listened to my intuition. All the really crappy things that that went wrong is when I didn't.
So, okay. So for somebody who's watching is like, I don't know what she's talking about. What does it
Mhm.
mean when I listened and things went right and I didn't know I was listening and now I know I know how. I mean, can you give like an example, like a concrete example of a and also you talk about the stories. I think what you're meaning is the stories you've told yourself, like how you've been living your life and your beliefs, and I think that's what you mean. But so tell us a little bit more about like how would somebody notice their intuition or know
Mhm.
how to listen to it.
Yeah, so I like literally mean going into my past,
You
like
do
thinking
pass.
through the past, and like, because we tell ourselves stories about everything. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
we're story making machines. But like to go into the past, into, we can even just call it a past moment, and instead of a story. I have a whole process that I do for going into it and really pulling out. Um, I call it like the gift in the wound, and really like pulling out what how this was a gift and a treasure and something good for you. And I have a whole process, and that developed from this. But essentially, I could see in going through my past, like, I could see slash feel, okay, because this is where the intuition is going to start to go off the left hand rails, okay, because it's really like it, everyone can go into a moment in their lives when they made a decision that went against something that was telling them to do otherwise. So that's
Mm-hmm.
a real basic thing.
Yeah.
And we all have that. And so that's where that started. Um, and then there's also the times when you do something and you're like, why am I doing this? This is crazy. I can't, but like, this is not what I should supposed to, all the shoulds, all the things. And yet it turns out beautifully and kind of magically. So we all have those moments. It's a matter of going back in our memories and finding those. And then you can start to piece together like, oh, wow, this is how it operates within me.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can go back in your memory and realize, like, if you really sit with that memory, you can see and remember how your intuition was speaking to you. So it might have been, it might have been like a pit of your stomach, because we have
Mm-hmm.
a second brain in the gut. And so that
Mm-hmm.
one, it has a lot of signals. Like, it could have been, something around heartache. It could have been recognizing how you rationalized away, because you really wanted something and you rationalized away all the warning signs. So it's different for everyone. Suffice it to say that if you can start to recognize those patterns within yourself, your right brain, so your intuitive brain, is going to start picking up patterns. Our brain is pattern seeking. So you can start to see it and understand it for yourself. So that's why, specifically the gut is its own brain center. I mean, there's as many neural cells in the gut as the cerebral brain, which is why they call it a second, like, it's a bona fide second brain as far as science is concerned. And then the heart has its own neural network as well. I mean, the biology is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to like lock in with your left brain, that, hold on, there's a brain around my heart, and there's a brain in my gut, then maybe that's not my only brain. And that's even
Right.
just a beginning, right? That might
Mm-hmm.
help a person who's very linear left brain originally, like me, say, "Oh, huh, I can get on board with that." And then it starts to allow you to open up, giving yourself permission to listen to your intuition a little more, to identify it, or to work with it, because it really is a tool.
Oh yeah, it's a tool that I went a lot of my life ignoring or not hearing it or like not paying attention to those red flags. And so that like this awakening process. What do you mean when you use that word awakening?
Mhm, mhm. Um, yeah, I know there's a lot that I sometimes I hesitate to use it. It really felt like I woke up to some truths that I never knew existed. Like, I want to find the right words here because look, I've also had really mystical experiences where I've had total complete oneness. I mean, I've had all kinds of mystical experiences as well. But that's not the point of this, because my point is to try to make it really practical. So
Mhm.
to me, awakening is when you kind of just like realize, like, oh man, I've really been listening to something else, and that's not my truth. It's almost like you open a door and you walk out of your limiting beliefs, and you realize there's like a whole other reality out there,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
not your limiting beliefs. So that is the most basic way. And I think everyone goes through it all the time. Anytime you have even a fight with somebody might wake you up to something, right? Because they might say something, they might, um, it just might trigger something in you that just kind of like it's just like a little key in a lock, and you go, oh, oh, I see this differently now. Nothing changed,
Right.
but your perception certainly changed. So awakening is an alteration of your perception to show
Mhm.
you an understanding or a knowing of things that were previously couldn't reach. You just previously couldn't reach them. So it's a change in perception to see, in reality more of what is out there, because our brain, um there's specifically one part of the brain called the default mode network. Its whole purpose, it's to constrict, it's to constrict and filter information, because our body and our energy system and our emotions and our brain and all of it, it's picking up trillions of bits of data
Mhm.
constantly all the time. If you consider that we can only hold 7 bits of data at any given time, but we're picking up trillions, where's the rest of that going? It's not going anywhere. It's there. How we're just interacting with less of it. And so that's why I love the science, because you learn that literally there's mechanisms in the brain that are essentially trying to filter out anything except for what's essentially necessary. So we're not experiencing almost anything. And so that's why advanced meditators, or even people who aren't advanced meditators, like meditation's been an incredible practice, you start to see the world differently. And that's what I mean, like that, like your brain becomes a little more open and a little more receptive to other information that is out there anyway, and like we
Right.
can get into the quantum of it. But suffice it to say that what we experience is also just our own reality. Like if I were to be in your body, in your mind, I would be in an altered reality.
Mhm.
It would
Yeah.
just not be anything like what my reality looks or feels like.
That's awesome. So I've got somebody saying, I can't see who it is. It says Facebook user. This is terrific. Many insights and validations.
Awesome.
Somebody else says, hello, ladies. That might be Maria Thorpe. I don't know. It usually is. And then somebody else says, great session, informative and inspiring.
Thank you.
So did you, um, we've talked about what awakening means to you. We've talked about productive intuition. What is inner work? A lot of people are
Yeah.
like, got to do the inner work, inner work.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
And I also realized I didn't actually answer some specific examples
Oh, yeah. Go
about
ahead.
my intuition. But I will say this about inner work. I also don't like the word work, but it's the most like, we know that word because we relate to it. To me, awakening and even just spirituality and even like purpose to me is to understand and know myself very
Mhm.
deeply, to be a master of myself. Maybe one day I can be self-realized, like the yogis. I think it would be amazing to really understand things on that level. I would love that. But in the meantime, the inner work is a call to go within, and when you think something's wrong on the outside, is to go find where it might be on the inside.
Mhm.
um, And it really gets into a lot of the, well, even like cliches, about like, you know, you can change your reality, you really can, because you're changing your perception and you're changing your vibration, literally. Like this, there's the science to back this as well. So to me, inner work is taking a lot of responsibility for what is happening in my life, what is happening out there, how I am perpetuating it, and to clear away everything that isn't serving how I want to feel and how I want to show up in the world. So, you know, the limiting beliefs, like we go inward to dismantle and unravel those. Like that's the work. If I want a result on the outside, I can like push for it and I might get it. Um, or I can take a step back and go inside and understand why I want it. So really aligning to meaning, and get very clear on my purpose and clear on my intention. I feel like it's all a purification of my intentions, so that when I do choose to go for something, it's aligned and it actually comes more easily. And for me to use the word ease, easy, easeful, like not in my vocabulary until recently,
Yeah,
because
mine neither.
I'm gonna push, I'm gonna make it happen, I'm, you know, I'm gonna go get it. So there's this whole world where what I do on the inside reflects on the outside, and the more I do my inner work, the more that is true for me on the outside. um
Okay,
and
well, let me just say something.
yeah.
That may be true for you, but
Mhm.
what if my mom is, I'm just making this up, but what if,
Yeah.
my parents are really jerks and they kind of abused me when I was younger and now they're not treating me right. And then the people at work, if they're a pain, and I work in retail, and so the customers are just kind of nasty and everything. So, what you're saying, I mean, that sounds, easy, but what about all this stuff that's happening all around me? And you're saying if I go inside and work on me, that's going to change?
Mhm. Yes, it 100% will.
I agree.
Yeah, it 100% will. We can't control other people. um so if somebody's unpleasant, we can't do anything about it other than not take it personally, you know, and not react. And there's like a whole level around when we clear our vibration, a lot of those things don't happen. Like i don't I don't get repetitive types of people or situations anymore. I just don't have that vibration anymore. It's changed. I've changed. And I've gotten a lot clearer. So family is one of the hardest things, right? And the practice there is to stay in my own space, and a lot of compassion, to really see them as their own individual human beings and not as what I've defined them to be.
Yeah, you're
um
right, Maria. You can only change
yeah,
you, no one else. It's
yeah,
easy
you
to
can't
say,
change them. Yeah,
but a
but
lot of times we're like, but if they would,
yeah, totally.
not
Yeah,
me, if they would just change.
yeah, yeah, that'll
What
never
you're
happen.
saying, we change, and then all of a sudden they do change, but they didn't.
Yeah,
It's our perception.
yeah, yeah. I had a really profound with moment like that with my dad several years ago. We went, well, it was like home for Christmas, and you know there's the patterns that are just going to always play out, like same patterns. And he was really upset. The kitchen was a mess. You know, he's got all these people in the house again, because now it's like him and my mom. It's just like it was a total mess, and he was like, I don't know what was wrong with him. And he was walking around the kitchen grumbling. And normally my reaction would be to react and get
Mhm.
angry at him for being upset. That was like, and that was our whole dynamic. And I had this really profound, it was like somebody put like a plexiglass down, and I just watched him, just super curiously. I don't know what happened to me, but I was just watching him, and I didn't say anything, and I just watched him, and I just let him be. And and in that watching him, intuitively, or whatever you want to call it, I understood that he's just really overwhelmed. There's a lot of people. He's not used to having a lot of people. He's not really good at showing his emotions because he's actually super happy that we're all here. But right
Mhm.
now the kitchen's a mess and he can't get his coffee, you know? And I just watched him, and as I was watching him, my sister walks in and she was ready to fight, right? Because she heard him being upset, doesn't even know why he's upset.
Mhm.
And so she was ready to fight, and I was like, "Hey, just leave him. He's just having a bad morning." And she she looks at me and she's like, "Who are you?" And and from that moment though, for me, that was like that's how I started to detach and break that usual habitual pattern. I mean, it's nothing magical. It's just a usual habitual pattern. And then my sister will always remembers that because she said, "When I saw you be so zen," she said, "I thought I want to be like you. That's
Mhm.
how I want to be too." And so he got over it and we didn't have a fight. So that's how other people change. Because
Yeah.
I didn't react in such a way to create the situation that would have otherwise happened. All he had to do is he was just a bit grumpy.
Right. And you probably weren't like, it wasn't hard for you to not react. It was easy to not react.
Yeah. It's just no pride.
It-
I had to just take my pride out of the equation.
right.
You
Right.
know? Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a really good story about that. What's another time when you recognize a pattern of not listening to your intuition and how
Yeah.
you know it's your intuition?
Yeah, I mean, look, that last the last role that I took before I left that industry. I left it for a while because I'm back in it now with like a totally different perspective.
Mhm.
Was I was being courted pretty hard for this role. It was the COO of a fintech firm, and my ego loved it.
Mhm.
Chief operating officer. I was, all the bells and whistles, like just so much validation that,
Yeah.
but for the wrong reasons. And I felt it, and I knew that wasn't a good idea. I knew it. I knew exactly what was going on because I know myself. And this was before I really knew myself, but I had enough wherewithal to know that like this something's not going to go right here. And it didn't. I mean, I did what I was there to do, but I only stayed for 6 months because I just recognized like I, this is a no. But I
Mhm.
stayed because that's what I do. I stay because I said I was gonna stay, and I'm gonna bear it. I'm gonna bear it. I'm gonna make this thing work. Because I said I'm
Push
gonna stay.
through.
I'm gonna push through. And so that was a breaking point, right? That was the breaking point when I left, and I thought I want to do something of purpose, and that whole story again. But I knew it. I knew it was for ego, and so that was one. I I was defrauded for a very large sum of money years ago, and I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have. I knew, but I rationalized it away, and so that was another one. And then on the flip side, when I did listen to my intuition, I helped launch the real estate crowdfunding industry, and I got into that really like randomly in a way. It's not random if I really tell the story because I was already kind of working in crowdfunding, but not equity crowdfunding, not the securities. I wasn't in the finance industry at that point. But something about it was told me this is something, it just really lit me up. And so I joined one of the very early firms, and I started a whole new career in fintech and real estate and crowdfunding, and is amazing. And that was me listening to my intuition in a really big way. Was that. And so like impulses, like they can be like really big things, and then they can also be small things. But most importantly, what I've learned with it is, especially around people, it's not so much I'm trying to like foretell the future.
Right.
um but I can tell when I get excited about something, when I have this uncanny ability, and I've always had it, to kind of see the future in terms of like trends. I can just play things out. um and which is why I used to do intellectual property development scouting, and lots of like what's the
Mhm.
future of this and how's this, because I can play that out future forward for whatever reason. I My brain can do that. um when my and so that's kind of a mental level of intuition, but for me with people, it was really like learning to trust my gut, to trust my heart when it came to people. And so, my business partners, and it's been 3 years now, I just it was we were aligned on our values. I set strong boundaries, they set theirs. We knew what we were all doing, and they felt like people that I wanted to work with. Like they felt like good people, and they are good people. I mean, we align on integrity, on values, on ethics, on morals, like all the most important things. And that was also somewhat intuitive, was like you feel like good people. And I
Mhm.
use that with everything. If you I know you, I can read you, and I had to own that within myself. I really had to own that part of me that can read people so well, because I also see the good in people, but I have to marry that with the discernment of everyone is good. I can see your soul, but your intentions are not good right now, and so I'm going
Mhm.
to walk away. And that's where I've landed now.
So for some of those things that you went through, like being defrauded of a bunch of money, I mean, what's the gift or the opportunity that you see in that?
I mean, that actually is the reason I even got that career, because I lost everything, everything. And I jumped into that industry because I had to, I mean, I needed a job. Like
Uh-huh.
and if I had, if that whole fraud had worked out for what it was supposed to be, right? Because it was investment fraud. I would have had all this other money. I would have been doing something else, but it kind of led me there. And it was an experience. I mean, there's a whole other level of experience there, because I actually got the money back. It took 7 years, and it's a really wild story, but a lot of it had to do with me facing the shame and the guilt that I had about myself,
That
and
inner work.
letting go. And when I finally let go, because this thing actually ended up being a criminal case, when I finally like truly actually let go, it came back around. And I was like, seriously, are you serious? I literally let this thing go. I was like, I couldn't even believe it. And then like the whole thing played out in multiple different ways, but energetically, I truly let go, and I truly forgave this person and wished the best for him. I didn't want him to go to jail. And I remember this moment where I had such a clear understanding, and I said, I just want you to do the right thing. I don't want more kids to lose their father. I don't want punishment. I just, please do the right thing. And what he did is he took a plea deal for restitution.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's a big, so some of the things are big, and I would, of listening to your intuition, but I think we all have experiences like what I'm going to share. I shared it with you before this, we went live, is I had scheduled, a few weeks ago, I was meeting a couple of people that are in the local alumni association chapter for the Naval Academy. We were going to meet for lunch, and it was up to me to schedule the place. So I picked the place, and, we we're going to meet at 11:30, and I was getting ready this morning, and something said in my head, it's my intuition, just popped in my head. Check and see what time they open.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I just kept brushing my teeth. I'm not going to worry about that. We're meeting there. And then I did check, and they open at noon, and we were eating at 11:30.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I was able to switch it, but it's like, that's not a coincidence.
No. No, we get pinged all the time. We just tell ourselves it's not important because we have all these other things going on in the mind. And the thing is like when you start to notice these like smaller things, then it's really fun, because then big things start to happen, because it's like all these little things, and you start to realize like that the sort of like this fabric of reality that we do have a lot more control, almost we don't have control over it, but in a strange like non-grabby way we do have more control, because there's like almost like a trust factor, like because what we do is we rely so much on the mind for all the answers. And god, that is a like a huge responsibility to put on a mind that's actually pretty clunky and slow.
Right.
compared to the real capacity that the whole brain has. We're usually operating with a very small part of the brain, and that's why like whole brain function is so powerful.
Yep.
And we're just not using it. Like we're asking one small part of the brain to run everything,
Everything.
and no wonder we're mentally exhausted.
Yeah, no wonder. Here's another example. So I'm in this coaching program to get certified, right?
Mm.
And we had to talk about an issue. And I'm telling these like everyday stories in the hopes that people can see themselves in them. And somebody posted this, they're wonderful stories. I identify. Somebody else said it's particularly important for women to learn to trust their intuitions. It's a great conversation to have, young women and girls. I completely agree. So here's an example. At the end of, I just started my business, right? And I don't like the attention to detail baloney stuff. And so at the end of last year, I had to go back through all my income and expenses, and it was a lot more expenses than income. And I had to figure out, I had to put it together for my taxes. So I said, I'm not doing that in 2021. I'm going to record my income and expenses every day or every week. Well, now it's July and I haven't done it. So in this coaching session, we had to come up with some things we were going to work on. I said, what I'm going to do to get my financial records straight. That day, I got 2 offers for coaching, 2 contract coaching things came in, email. That's not a coincidence. It's like it's like, do what you can with what you have. God, the universe, not going to just put it on your lap if you're not doing the work. But by just taking that initiative, what if I had cleared it out months ago? Maybe I'd be a millionaire by now. You never know. But I mean, I'm just saying that wasn't a coincidence.
No, it's because you got clear.
I got clear.
I'm
doing it.
Transmitter receivers, right? Like we're blocking information, and that's why like we're full of crap, which is why the inner work is to get rid of all the crap so that we can receive more of the inspiration and more of what comes through. And there is some really, it almost seems like magic, but when you commit and when you show God, source, spirit, you're serious and you mean it, everything has to be grounded in an actual action. This is where the secret stuff goes really wrong, is that, oh, you can just sit there and wish for something and
right.
like have an affirmation practice. That's not enough. You have to like feel it, and you have to take an action towards it, because that's a way of signaling to everything, your body, yourself, all of you, that you mean business.
Yeah.
And in a business, one of the things we most often don't look at ever is our finances. And so that just stays in this shadowy part of us. And actually, like that is like that's like the ground, that's like ground zero foundation. And it's necessary. And I personally, when I really found the meaning, and when I went back into investing, aside from these great partners and like our vision and everything, is that to me, financial stability is one of my values. It's a huge value for me. I am not comfortable if I'm not financially stable. I am not creative if I'm not financially stable. And I had to express that to my husband, to myself, because I had some shame stories around money and like greed and so I had to clear all of that out and say, no, you know what? I'm going to stand up for this value of mine. And now I'm at the stage where, to me, wealth is a form of self-care.
Yeah.
Really, we have to take care of our finances because that's the world we live in.
It doesn't make you a bad person because you have money.
Exactly. But we get told that in so many different ways. And to be honest, like there's a lot of money in the world. A lot.
There's an abundance of money. And, so it's taken me a long time. I'll just share another story if you don't mind.
No, please.
Because I'm interviewing you, but it's taken me a long time. I've worked for the Navy. I worked for the Navy starting at age 18. And when I was in high school, I didn't really work because I played basketball. My parents said, play basketball will help you get into college. And it did. I went to the Naval Academy. So then the taxpayer paid for my education at the Naval Academy. The taxpayer paid for my master's degree. The taxpayer paid for all the training I got when I was at the Naval Academy or in the Navy for 38 years. And the Navy told me how much money I was worth, right? They paid me.
Mhm,
So then
mhm.
I get out and I start my own company, and it's like, oh, I don't want to make a lot of money. I don't know. I don't really need money. I'm getting retirement, so I don't need it. And I had all these issues around money, and I didn't know how to like value myself. And one day, so a couple things have changed. Somebody recently contacted me, Emily, can I pick your brain on something? In the past, I would have said yeah, and I'd spend an hour and let my brain be picked. Now I'm like, yeah, and here's my rate.
Yep.
I couldn't do that 2 years ago. And one other thing is our coach had us put two chairs facing each other, and I had to sit in a chair, and in the other chair was money.
Mhm.
And I was like this. That's how I initially started, unconsciously, like looking at money, like, I don't need you. I'm
Uh-huh.
fine. And then I had to switch and I had to be money. And I had to say what money was thinking to me. And money said to me, this was my intuition. I wasn't using my thinking head. Money said, I'm here. I'm holding back a ton of
Mhm.
myself, but I'm not coming to you because you don't want me.
Yep.
Why
Oh, I
should
love
I?
it. I love it.
And why
Yeah.
should I come to you if you're not keeping your financial records straight? You're not going to be, if you can't straighten up a few $1,000s, how are you going to straighten up all this money I have to send you? You're not getting it. So I wasn't clear enough on what I needed, what I wanted to do with the money, how I was going to do good in the world with the money. It took me a long time. That's the inner work. And there's no checklist, and there's no, let me get from A to B. It's not like this. It's
Yeah. It is. I love that story because what it really there's 2 things. So one, it really shows, um, in a physicalized way, in a really visual way, right? Like your body language, it's like everything, and we don't realize it, which is why like really getting in touch with our bodies is so important for
Mhm.
intuitive work. Um, and just for basic self-care, right? We don't have anything without our health. Um, and and also I'm a very independent person. It does not come naturally to me to ask for anything.
Mhm.
Um, and so if I'm closed, so this is part of my work recently as well, right? If I'm sitting back going like I don't need anyone, who's going to show up to help me?
No one, you don't need
And
them.
if they do, I'm probably going to say nicely, no, no, thank you, but you're still saying no to somebody who's being generous. Like it's a whole energetic exchange. But if I'm closed off to anything, nothing's going to come in because I'm not letting it come in. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not letting it come in. So that's the first thing. The second thing is when you were saying like, it's basically like the swirls and the things. As we do our work though, I promise, um it's still swirls and stuff, but it's kind of like on a chart. You you don't go down as far anymore. Like it kind of does this, you know. It's never going to go back down. It can't.
Yeah,
It
that's
can't.
all.
As
And
you wake up, as you clear limiting beliefs, as you get in touch with yourself, you can't go backwards. There's no going backwards. So it it starts to get less less spiky because it starts to like level off a little bit. And I do believe we're all like due for some big hits every once in a while.
yeah,
But the lows aren't as low, and they're not as deep, and they're not as long.
that's good because I've started to notice that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. So somebody's, retiring and they've got this big title in their current job and they retire.
Mhm.
Who are they? How do they figure out who they are?
Yeah. That's the work. They're
That's the work.
That's the work. That's a big one. I mean, that's what happened to me. That's what happens to a lot of people when we're like, wait a second, who am I anymore? Because we've constructed an entire identity based on that, and it's familiar, and we know how it works. We know how we work. We know how other people respond and react, and that's quite simply the ego.
Yeah.
Um, that likes certainty. The ego is an uncertainty reduction machine in the brain.
Mhm.
I don't like uncertainty. Um, and and that's the work, and it's an exploration, and it can be really challenging if we believe that we are no longer of value. valuable, worthy, who am I? It's like maybe with a humongous dose of curiosity and playfulness, like, wow, who am I? Who do I care?
Yeah.
Who who it's like if I had had more fun with it, I would have suffered so much less.
Hmm.
Like so much less. But no, I was like clinging. I can't let go of this thing. And then like I went into another industry, right, which was like coaching or like spiritual world. And all I did was I transported my old ways of being into my ego was like, okay, let's go make a successful business person identity over here. Well, that's not how it works, which is why nothing worked, which was what I came to understand much later was that, you know, I can't remember if the guy's name is George Marshall, but the saying is what got you here won't get you there.
Yeah.
It just won't. And you can't bring your old ways into a new search, or like it's not even a search, it's a remembering. Because what happens in my perspective, and this is why I call it digging the soul out from under the ego, is all we're doing is we're remembering, we're just taking the layers of all of the things off. It's remembering. It's like rediscovering ourselves, and curiosity, joy, surrender, asking for help, or just like being around people, having the conversations like you were having, like being vulnerable enough to say, like, here's the parts of me that I would rather not show. All of that makes it way easier than trying to like, bull in a china shop your way through this, because you're coming out with a destroyed shop and the bull is still going, because that's how the ego works.
Yeah. And but once you do that, and like you said, once the swirly stuff kind of calms down,
Mhm.
it's heaven on earth,
Mhm.
isn't it?
It is. It makes it easier. I probably we'll see. Time will tell. But this past winter, I went through something pretty severe, which was a different kind of awakening. And the reason I say time will tell is that it usually takes me a little bit of time to understand things fully. But I had a very severe flare of Crohn's disease, which I've had since I was 16, and I was immobilized.
Wow.
Um, I dropped to close to 100 pounds. I couldn't walk, I couldn't move, because the inflammation
Wow.
out of my intestine into my upper body, like I was a skeleton. Couldn't walk. My husband had to help me out of bed. I'm 42. So um and I had to wrestle for about 6 weeks with what if this is, because I was like, is it lupus, is it leukemia,
Yeah.
I don't know what this is crazy, this is not my intestine, it's not just my intestine. Because it took a while to get tests and everything, and it was a really profound, I was in an altered state for 6 weeks. I was in so much pain that I would be passed out. I couldn't do anything. Like, I mean, I can't even describe, because I have a lot of energy normally. I could only survive my body, and I could deal
Wow.
with this pain. It was the most intense experience. And I was also, I really had to wrestle with like, maybe I'm always going to be like this. Maybe I never get to go back. And so and all of this idea, right? When we identify with the body and like what the body is capable of, like I couldn't even lift a water bottle. I couldn't make my own food. And I thought, who am I? So like, let's move out of the career stuff into like, who am I if I can't even like, not fend for myself, but like I went through all these things. Why would my husband stay with me if he
Right.
has to like take care? Why would my business partners, oh my God, like if I can't work, like I went through I could see all the thoughts because I had nothing else to do. Like I couldn't read. I didn't feel like
Mm.
consuming content, like I just would not, I just could only sit with this pain in my body and this focus on, well, I'm here. So I'm not all who I thought I was. Because I'm still here, and everything felt different and looked different. And I also have never experienced so much gratitude and so much love as when I was that ill, and so much support. Like I would cry daily. I just would like weep in love and gratitude. I didn't understand, like because I was alive, because
Wow.
I have so much already. I have so much. And I made somewhat of a, I made a V-shaped recovery. So And this is what I mean about the lows. They're not as deep. I mean, this was severe, but I got through a lot of the mental stuff. I cleared a lot of stuff very quickly, very quickly. The day after my colonoscopy, when I got, the for sure diagnosis, and my doctor looked at me and she was like pale white because she was like, I'm really worried about you. And I've never seen an intestine in such bad shape. So you should really be prepared that we're going to have to cut the whole thing out.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, okay, wow. um, and um, and so I sat with that. And the next morning, I got out of bed, and and I remember thinking like I should strip the bed. And a voice inside of me said, "You can't. You're too weak. Don't do that." And that voice was my helper, because if you tell me not to do something or that you can't, you better believe I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stopped because I heard the voice and I heard the implication. And I came to terms with, yeah, I mean, I might have to have this surgery. And I said, you know what? I said, and I made this decision and it was magic. And I said, I am not sick and weak, and I will not be sick and weak. And even though I had like, I had kind of had crow fingers because of the arthritis in my hands, like I couldn't even like, it took me like 10 minutes to strip the bed. And I carried these sheets down to the washer, which felt like a ton of bricks to me. And I put them in the washer. And from that day forward, before I was even given any dose of medication, I started to get better immediately. My husband was like, "You look different." I was hungry that day. Colors started to come back in. From that day forward, before I even took the first, I was on steroids and biologics, and I started to get better. And my doctor, she's like, "I don't know what you are." And I said, "No, it's okay. I know what I am. I'm blessed." And I know when I'm aligned, when it matters, when I make a decision that just everything falls into place. That's how powerful we are.
Yeah.
And so, and this was an 8-week ordeal. Now, granted, I'm still like recovering, and it's not like I was like instantaneously healed and everything. Like it's going to take some time, but that was like, and it happened just as suddenly. It happened out of nowhere 3 days after moving into my new home. It happened out of nowhere. It just took me down. And then I just went right back up, and I haven't looked back since.
Wow, what an awesome story. We've got to wrap this up, but that's just a good way to end it with that story. I think we gave a lot of good examples that anyone watching can relate to. Like, I get that, I can apply that to my life. I wanted to show your book. I really highly recommend. You see, mine's all notes in it and everything. I highly recommend this book. I'm going to put it. This is the name of the book. You can get it on Amazon, right?
Yeah. Amazon, yeah. Barnes and Nobles. I know most people are on Amazon, but it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you've got some good exercises in here, like some good journaling reflections. And do you coach on this?
I don't. No.
Okay, you don't.
I don't coach on it. I do keynote speaking, so I can speak to organizations and like group facilitation. I do have a master class that I'm building out called Writing the Self, and that's that process where we take people through and like rewire and reprogram the past to pull the gift out, and it's groundbreaking in what it can do for you. And that's something that I've developed, but that's coming a little bit later in the year.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's more like group facilitation, keynote speaking, and then this masterclass.
And then you've got your website. That's where people can find you. And then productiveintuition.com. And they can also connect with you on LinkedIn. Yeah. So when you went through all of this, did you work with coaches, or did you do this all on your own?
I did almost all of it on my own.
All of it on your own.
Yeah, I did at one point. Work with a coach, more on the spiritual stuff, because I really realized and she's a channel, and so we did a lot of energetic clearing, and that's the only real like coach that I worked with. My path really called me to two things. One was doing it on my own, and the other one was plant medicines.
Uh-huh. Plant medicines,
Um,
yeah.
and so those were some allies for me. Um, but yeah, it has been my path to do a lot alone, but part of my journey and my learning is that I'm not alone and to ask for help. And so, um, and coaching is so, I mean, it is so valuable. It is
Yeah.
so valuable. I think everybody should have a coach. I think everybody should have a psychotherapist. I mean, I think everyone should have an objective third party who understands some of these mechanisms that, like, you're trained in some stuff. Like, I'm actually, because I did some training in different things, and but I'm a little bit more of an academic from that perspective. I'm in the science and the quantum and all these kinds of things, but um I love to facilitate, but I think coaching is something very specific, and it's not a surprise to me that there's a surge in coaching and a surge in the need for it, because we sometimes just want somebody else to see us clearly, and to help us, um also to believe in ourselves. Sometimes it's all you need is somebody who's been through it, who can really show you.
Yeah, somebody who's so I've worked with quite a few different coaches. Thanks, Joseph. Plant medicine, good to know. I've been through quite a few, worked with quite a few coaches, and what I like is just getting different perspectives, but they all kind of lead to the same thing, and they help me develop. So I developed a roadmap of kind of my journey, and this is what I coach with, this roadmap, and it's kind of with my logo, the E. And my son said, "Too bad life doesn't throw you just one loop like that." And it's true. But it's got some steps, open, notice, widen, accept, reflect, dream, energize, release, and these are all steps that I coach people through to help them. And it's not like do this, do this, do this, do this,
No.
but it's a guide.
And you've been through it, so you created that, and that comes from your experience, and so you can hold space and you can guide somebody and you can facilitate for them, because you've lived it and you're still living it, which I think is one
Mhm.
of the beautiful things, is like, you're still living it and you're still learning, and so you bring that forward,
Yeah,
which is really beautiful. I'm very mistrusting of people who are like, I have the answer, I know exactly what you need, because it's like, no, I barely know what I need. You know what I'm saying? Like, I barely know. I mean, I do a lot better now, but
yeah,
I think it's pretentious for somebody to just like slap something on me.
right.
Plus I'm
A
too
coach
rebellious.
helps you figure out what you already know, what's already
Mhm.
in you,
Mhm,
right?
mhm. But we need that because we can't see it. We're so blinded
No.
by all the crap, like all the ego, all the things. And that's I can see other people often more clearly than I can see myself, which is why I do so much of my inner work, because I need to be able to be a clear mirror for others, because I know that's just part of who I am. It's not a job, but it's to be a clear mirror, to hold space, um, and to be able to see myself in other people's reflections, and to be able to say, like, especially if somebody says something that's maybe not what I want to hear, how is even one perspective of that true? How is that true? Because if I'm triggered, then it's clearly true because I'm triggered. So I got to go find it, and I got to
Mhm.
go find where it is in me, so that I'm not triggered with a knee jerk reaction of, like,
Right.
me wanting to, like, attack somebody, because that's just my, like, go to. That would be my go to. So anyway, yes,
And sometimes our go-to is to tell people what they should do, and that's not what a coach does. And it was so interesting in coach training. Sometimes people are asking, "Well, what if I'm working with a client and I know the answer, but they're not saying it? Can I tell them?" And that's not. How do you know your answer is the right answer
yeah,
for them?
yeah,
You don't.
yeah,
So what you do is you ask empowering questions like who, what, where, which, why, and to get them
yeah,
thinking. I just worked with a client today on an issue, and she's like, at the end, she's like, I'm looking at it from a whole different point of view, and it felt so good because that's what you try to get. It was like I didn't even know that I could look at it this way.
yeah. Amazing.
It's
Yeah, it's
fun.
perfect. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we're not gonna, like, even if you give somebody the answer, they're gonna be like, well, great. it doesn't land in the same ways when they pull it out from themselves, and it's almost like a flower that blooms when they find their own answers, as opposed to like giving them,
Right.
just giving them one that, I don't know, it's very, it's when you can get there in yourself, it anchors in you in a very, very different way than if somebody just tells you something. I mean, how many of us actually listen to what other people say?
I mean, my son always told me when I tried to coach him in basketball, I just want to learn naturally, Mom. And so that's how he approaches life. And so, I've shared before that he's an alcoholic. And in the episode this week, I mean, I tried to help him, right? And in the episode this week that I published, I said, there was so much going on. And I got divorced from their dad. And then my son was doing this and all this. And I'm thinking I could have, back then I would say, I feel so bad for Will because he's just drowning his feelings in drinking, and I need to get him help, and I need to get him counseling, and I need to get this and this and this. But you know what? I was drowning my feelings in working, but I couldn't see that in myself. I was achieving. Yeah. And I'm focusing on trying to fix Will. That's an example. Focus on fixing not fixing, but going inward and working on yourself. And there's one other comic that, I've seen that has this son standing in front of his mom. And she said, he's an addict. I've done your 12 steps homework. I've folded your laundry. I've done this, this, and this. Okay. So why should he work on himself?
Yeah, it's so true. So true.
So I've just seen it, and you can see it maybe more in alcoholics or something. But we all have mine was a workaholic, or burying my feelings. We all have something, but it's harder, like you said, to see it in ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. We have multiple things.
So yeah.
Many. So it's like, I was talking to somebody today and they said like, we should start Achievers Anonymous, because that's definitely a form of addiction. And the thing is like, I to me, because the practice for me has always been self-compassion and to be compassionate, because there's like a whole lot of things like wrong. I could frame it in a number of different ways that would keep me in shame.
Yeah.
Right? That would keep me feeling bad. Or I can frame it as, I'm so grateful to be alive and to be here and to be waking up and doing this and showing up every day and learning about myself and meeting other incredible people like you. And I mean, honestly, like I can only be grateful, laugh at myself, and just bring a whole bunch of compassion to the table when, I'm doing things or acting in a way that is not really my best self. And that's it.
Yep. Thank you, AdaPia, for being on the Onward podcast. And thank you for everybody who submitted comments and listened. And Joseph says, if you're not patient with yourself, how can you be patient with others? So true.
Yeah.
So
thanks for having me. It
was fun. And go to her website, go to AdaPia's website and check out her book. I highly recommend it. And if you just stay here for a second, I'll end the show and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah.